Russia in panic. The empire is falling apart. Disaster strikes the Kremlin on every front. The West is uniting, new alliances are forming, and even Erdoğan has turned his back on Putin. The dictator has snapped, screaming in desperation. Europe is rearming at lightning speed. NATO fleets are on high alert, and the skies are filling with Ukrainian drones, millions of them. The occupiers are collapsing under pressure, their army is broken, their weapons are running out, and their fear is growing by the hour. Meanwhile, Ukraine is rising stronger than ever, with new missiles, new technology, and powerful allies ready to strike back. The world is changing before our eyes. The balance of power is shifting, and Russia can't stop what's coming. All the details in our special edition of Hotspot. Turkey's strongman has turned against the Kremlin. Erdoğan is cutting deals with Washington and Kyiv, leaving Putin stunned and isolated. Moscow didn't see this betrayal coming, but the blow has already landed. Panic ripples through the Kremlin, alliances crumble, and the balance of power shifts before world's eyes. Trump bets on Erdoğan to finish what Ukraine began, to push Putin into a corner with no way out. The betrayal that Russia feared most has come true, and it could change the course of the entire war. The game has turned, and the next move will decide everything. All the explosive details in our report.
Trump has named the specific president who he believes could effectively help resolve Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine.
Putin respects him, and he is my friend.
Recep Tayyip Erdoğan is actively involved in peacekeeping efforts to end Russia's war against Ukraine. He positions his country as a reliable mediator. The first negotiations after the start of the full-scale war took place in Istanbul in the spring of 2022. Several rounds of negotiations between representatives of the Kremlin and Ukraine also took place in Turkey in the summer of 2025.
Turkey has always advocated for a diplomatic path to achieve this goal. Now, after 3 years of immense suffering, an opportunity has finally arisen.
At last, an opportunity has finally arisen.
We hope that the negotiations in Istanbul will open a new chapter. Turkish mediation was also crucial in the Black Sea Grain Initiative, the grain corridor, which was vital for global food security. The Turkish company Baykar continues to integrate Ukrainian-made engines into its combat drones. Ukrainian engineers are interning at the Baykar plant in Istanbul, and in the future, they will form a team to work at the facility in Ukraine, which during its construction is constantly under attack from Russia.
Reinforced concrete buildings can be rebuilt. What truly matters is our will and our faith in this project. No missile can damage our friendship.
Turkey's support for Ukraine is not limited to Bayraktars and mediation.
We have demonstrated our solidarity with Ukraine in practice by providing concrete assistance in political, economic, humanitarian, and technical spheres.
Turkey closed the straits in the Black Sea to Russian warships, which significantly limited the aggressor's capabilities in the southern direction, and provided Ukraine with missiles with a range of 20 to 70 kilometers for destroying both moving and stationary ground targets.
For 500 days, the Ukrainian people have been defending the territorial integrity of their country.
The year 2025 changed a lot in Ankara's relationship with Moscow. The Kremlin feels the distancing of its old partner, realizing that Putin has fewer and fewer allies. And then another blow from Erdoğan. By the end of 2028, Turkey plans to meet more than half of its natural gas needs through domestic production and imports from the United States. The Kremlin understands that for them, this means a loss of revenue and a reduction in Russian supplies to the European market.
We won't run out of gas. We possess significantly more natural gas reserves than anywhere else in the entire world.
We have it, but is it needed? But it's not just about gas. Turkey has implemented a decision to build 3 different types of military ships, which will take the country's navy another step forward. Turkey plans to develop one of the aircraft carriers together with Spain. In terms of size, it matches American nuclear aircraft carriers. In the summer of 2025, Turkey joined the drone coalition led by Latvia and the United Kingdom. Currently, the coalition already includes 20 countries providing Ukraine with military assistance in this area. In 2025, the coalition members pledged to allocate €2.75 billion in support of Ukraine and have already contributed $180 million to the Joint Procurement Fund.
Just as we declared our rejection of the war 3 years ago when the conflict began, today we are determined to do everything possible to end the war through negotiations. In doing so, we continue our steadfast support for the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of Ukraine.
Turkey has declared its readiness to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine. Projects are planned in the fields of energy, energy efficiency, social housing, and water supply.
Turkey is interested in ensuring that Ukraine controls the northern coast of the Black Sea and that Russia does not appear there. In addition, Turkey is interested in the reconstruction of Ukraine. It is a huge market. Moreover, Turkey sees an opportunity to intensify the development of its military technical industry, considering that it can receive additional resources from selling its weapons. All of this together creates a solid foundation for being interested in this process.
Turkey, as a NATO country, was ready to send its troops to Ukraine to guarantee the implementation of peace agreements. Naturally, this initiative was condemned by the Kremlin. Officially, Ankara supports the territorial integrity of Ukraine, but tries to maintain a balance between the parties. Turkey is still trying to avoid joining the Western sanctions, which in its view allows it to remain an effective channel of communication between the Kremlin and Ukraine.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The world stands on the edge of chaos. Swedish naval forces have reportedly confronted a mysterious Russian submarine prowling through international waters of the Baltic Sea. The tense encounter sent shockwaves across Europe. Radar systems went wild, fleets scrambled, and military analysts were sounding the alarm. What secret mission was the Kremlin sub carrying out so far from its base? Is Putin testing NATO's resolve or preparing for something far more dangerous? A single wrong move could ignite the fuse of World War III. The clock is ticking. The details are coming next.
The Swedish Navy detected a Russian submarine in the Baltic Sea. The military reported this on the social network X. According to the agency, the vessel entered the Baltic through the Great Belt Strait and was later spotted in the Kattegat Strait between Sweden and Denmark. Air Force units and fighter jets escorted the submarine. The Swedes described this episode as nothing more than a routine mission. The Navy did not disclose the name of the vessel. It is only known that it is a multi-purpose diesel-electric submarine of the Kilo class, according to NATO classification. The same class includes the submarine Novorossiysk, with which the Russians recently embarrassed themselves in front of the whole world when it unexpectedly surfaced off the coast of France.
By many characteristics, this is the best submarine not only in the Russian fleet, but in the entire world. Its engine runs more quietly than the sound of the sea outside, which means the vessel can remain undetected on NATO radar screens.
The submarine itself is so well designed that it's no wonder it's called the Black Hole. Detecting this submarine, I think, will be a major problem for any potential adversary.
This is how, 10 years ago, Russian propaganda talked about the lead vessel of Russia's modernized submarine project. The Novorossiysk was built specifically for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. The media enthusiastically claimed that the vessel was capable of sinking an entire group of enemy ships. But now, in 2025, it seems it's getting ready to sink itself.
According to the VCHK GPU, due to damage in the fuel system of the Novorossiysk, which is on combat duty in the Mediterranean Sea, fuel is leaking directly into the bilge. There are no spare parts for repairs or qualified specialists on board the submarine. The crew is unable to fix the malfunction. Because of this serious accident, other problems have started to occur as well. The accumulated fuel in the bilge is an explosive hazard. The source believes that the crew has no other choice but to start opening the bilge right in the sea.
In order to, as they say, solve the problem, they will have to, there's no other option, they will have to pump this water-fuel mixture overboard. Well, basically, yes, of course, if something like this starts happening, and there's no doubt that the submarine is being watched by aircraft, anti-submarine aviation, the Mediterranean Sea is, in fact, quite a densely populated area with military vessels from different countries. It will be easily noticeable by the large rainbow-colored slick. So essentially that's what everyone is watching for right now. But it should be noted that after all, a submarine about 70 meters long is not such a big deal, not such a huge volume, although of course any environmental pollution is absolutely unwelcome.
Now hundreds of international experts are monitoring to ensure that the Russians do not provoke an environmental disaster. The Russian Ministry of Defense is putting on a brave face, saying there's no emergency, that everything is going according to plan. At the same time, they neglect to clarify what exactly the vessel was doing in the Mediterranean Sea, given that the withdrawal of the last submarine was reported back in January, and whether there are Novorossiysk caliber missiles on board, which the Russian army launches from such submarines. And most importantly, what the command isn't mentioning at all, is there any danger to the crew's lives?
Diesel fumes are incredibly explosive, especially when one considers that a submarine is literally and completely packed with numerous and diverse electrical devices. At virtually any given moment, a tiny spark could potentially cause a devastating fire and the complete destruction of the entire submarine and its unfortunate crew. For me, the main question today is, what exactly is the Russian Federation planning to save? Is it primarily planning to save the valuable hardware? Or is it in fact planning to save the precious human lives, the people? From my personal point of view, in the unfortunate event of such a catastrophic accident, most of the crew members should have been safely taken off the ship, or indeed off the submarine, leaving behind only those dedicated sailors who are truly able to valiantly fight for the vessel's continued survivability and operational integrity. And fighting for survivability primarily means that all critical compartments of the submarine must be completely sealed, so that there is absolutely no fuel leakage whatsoever throughout the entire submarine's various compartments.
So far, hardware remains the top priority for officials at the Russian Ministry of Defense. And it's clear that the experience of the nuclear submarine Kursk, where 118 crew members died, has taught them nothing. Novorossiysk did not request assistance and, under the watchful eye of NATO anti-submarine aircraft, is heading to the port of Kronstadt, where it is supposedly expected on October 21st. According to sources from a public channel close to law enforcement, there have been 10 incidents on the submarine during its watch. If Novorossiysk makes it to the base, the crew will be lucky and will be replaced by another. Whether the Russians will be able to revive the submarine is a big question.
Europe is bracing for a possible war with Russia, and the alarm bells are ringing across the continent. The European Union has unveiled an ambitious plan to prepare for a full-scale confrontation by 2030. Massive rearmament programs are already in motion. Joint production of combat drones, cutting-edge air defense systems, and a unified European command structure to counter Moscow's aggression. Brussels is calling for unprecedented military coordination among member states. Europe is no longer just watching the war, it's getting ready to fight it. Learn more about this in our next report.
The EU is preparing for war with Russia.
And the Europe that we have all loved so very much is slowly but surely disappearing.
Bloomberg reports that the European Union will launch a large-scale defense reform to be ready for war by 2030.
Plans are great, but once again, they can run into reality and be shattered by that very reality, especially if they depend on supplies from China, Southeast Asia, or, for example, Taiwan. And if, for instance, there is a war in Taiwan, that means Taiwan won't be shipping microelectronics to anyone. Those goods simply won't be produced. And all these 5 or 7 year plans end up falling apart and getting pushed into the indefinite future.
According to the plan, by the end of 2027, the European Union intends to make almost half of its arms purchases jointly. And that's, just for the record, twice as much as now.
Money isn't a problem. The money is there. The real question is whether there will be anything to buy with that money. This isn't like going to the supermarket. The military industry is such that a lot of things are only produced with advance payment. Well, only with advance payment. You sponsor it. In other words, you finance it, you pay for it, and then they'll produce exactly what you paid for. You invest, and only 3 or 4 years later do you actually receive your goods. This doesn't happen quickly. Everything moves very slowly.
But for the implementation of joint projects in the fields of air and missile defense, they plan to create international coalitions as early as 2026. But will this really affect all European countries?
Most likely, the countries that are closer to the Russian Federation, the countries that are the drivers of the European economy, like the UK, France, Germany, and those geographically closer to Russia, such as Poland, the Baltic states, and Finland, will of course be the most interested. Italy, Portugal, Spain, they're kind of far away, all of them are far away. I don't think they'll be very interested.
It's no secret that for a long time Europe relied on the US when it came to security. But with Trump's arrival, a lot changed.
Trump froze relations with the European Union. For the first time in history, the US and Europe stopped looking like a united West and allies. Trump avoids contact with EU officials, ignores their appeals, and simply doesn't respect them. Instead, he communicates directly with the leaders who interest him, bypassing the EU leadership. Without the usual US support, both military and financial, the EU risks turning into a museum continent with a bright past, but a weakened economy and industry.
So just how dependent is Europe on the US already, even now? And is it really capable of defending itself?
Europe doesn't produce everything that the United States of America has. Apparently, they'll remain dependent for at least another 10 years. But the first signs that Europe could start to do without US assistance are already beginning to appear. It's clear that Europe, together with the US, carries much more weight than Europe without the US.
Europe is planning to arm itself. But why? After all, if you listen to the Kremlin dictator, Russia is the most peace-loving country in the world.
It turns out that war with the Russians is almost at the doorstep. They repeat this nonsense, this mantra, over and over again. They can't possibly believe what they're saying, that Russia is planning to attack NATO. Well, that's just impossible to believe.
Maybe the European countries simply misunderstood the Kremlin's sincere intentions and are wasting billions for nothing.
Russian propagandists often complain that right now is the best moment, while Europe is weak, while it's divided, while the US has drifted away from Europe to take some decisive steps toward those countries that interest them. Again, that's what the war correspondents say, but Russian leaders are a completely different story. They look at it differently. They consider whether there are financial, political, or military opportunities and try to predict the outcome.
Putin's Russia is full of surprises. And even when its dictator says one thing, in reality, the exact opposite can happen. In such a case, the best option is to play it safe, which is exactly what Europe has decided to do.
Repression in occupied Crimea has reached a terrifying new level. Even Crimean Tatar women are now being hunted down. The Russian occupiers, desperate to tighten their grip, are staging mass raids and arrests under fabricated terrorism charges tied to a mythical global caliphate. Homes are being stormed, families torn apart, and fear is spreading across the peninsula. The indigenous people of Crimea are once again facing persecution, this time under the banner of Moscow's lies. What has driven the Kremlin to such hysteria, and what dark plans are behind this new wave of terror? Don't miss it.
The level of human rights in occupied Crimea is approaching zero. Every day, Ukrainian human rights defenders document crimes, victims of repression, peaceful women, mothers, and female students.
The Russian Federation knows perfectly well that as long as the indigenous population remains absolutely united, they will not in any way succeed in their endeavors. They will not be able to resist, to strengthen, or to take root. That is why there is constant pressure on the indigenous population through intimidation, repression, persecution, and the imposition of heavy sentences, or through extrajudicial executions when a person goes missing and their relatives have no idea what happened to them.
Mass detentions and arrests in Crimea by the Russian security services began in 2014. Experts note that now the repressions have also become demonstratively brutal.
All these extensive searches, numerous detentions, and unduly harsh sentences are being carried out primarily to suppress internal public opinion that is in favor of the Russian Federation and its policies. This will only intensify.
Since the start of the full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian security forces have initiated several times more criminal cases against Crimeans than during all the previous years of the peninsula's occupation. Most of the courts are closed, where security forces openly abuse the defendants and seek to hand down the harshest possible sentences.
As of today, the law of the Russian Federation is in effect there. It has no reverse function except for one thing: repression, repression, and more repression.
If before February 2022 there were only 5 known cases against women with an obvious political motive, then after the invasion began, the occupiers have already opened 31 new ones. And this does not include abductions, religious cases, and proceedings against women living in the newly occupied territories.
There's nothing surprising about this because the Russian repressive machine operates exactly in this way whenever necessary. In order to sway public opinion in favor of Russian propaganda, they specifically target women, the elderly, and children. The same practice was used in Chechnya. Many times I personally saw how people who were in the same cell with me were forced to accept the conditions imposed on them because in the neighboring cell, either their sister or their wife was being held.
Women are given sentences that are average or the maximum possible term. The occupation courts demonstratively ignore mitigating circumstances such as age, having children, or caring for elderly parents. Judges often mock the defendants, commenting on their appearance and physical condition, and also restrict the defense's right to present evidence and call witnesses.
Before a person ends up imprisoned by them. Beforehand, a criminal case against this person is already prepared. And it's never the case that when you end up in court, the judge studies your case just a couple of days before. No, the judge knows from the very beginning that you will end up before them. The judge knows from the start exactly what sentence they will give you. There are no human rights here, no convention works at all, absolutely. Only one thing works here. They have a kind of slogan: if you ended up with us, it means you're guilty.
On October 15th, it became known that mass searches were carried out in the homes of Crimean Tatar women in occupied Crimea.
The search warrant was not shown to the family. The search was even conducted in the children's room. Then the security forces went down to the basement. 2 phones were confiscated. While Nemetuleva was packing her things, the security officers followed her every step. In the end, the detainee was brought to the FSB office at 7 a.m., 3 hours after the security forces arrived.
FSB officers detained 4 women: Esma Nemetulaeva, Nasiba Saidova, Elviza Alieva, and Fivzia Osmanova.
The only thing left now is to document and to speak out about it, about what is happening there, and to help in any way possible, either by getting this person out of the area or by providing some other kind of assistance. But one thing is very important, that the Ukrainian military structure does not postpone the deoccupation of these regions.
Ukraine strongly condemns yet another wave of repressions by Russian occupation authorities in Crimea against the indigenous Crimean Tatar people.
Propaganda media are spreading fabricated accusations about a women's cell allegedly promoting the ideas of a global caliphate, trying to justify the repressions and portray peaceful women, mothers, educators, and students as terrorists. Such actions are part of Moscow's systematic offensive against the Crimean Tatar people, aimed at destroying their national identity, spirituality, and right to their own land.
This demonstrative cruelty has a clear goal: to intimidate the Crimean population and suppress any manifestations of resistance. In 26 out of 31 cases, the repressions are directly linked to Ukraine.
I strongly condemn these actions of the Russian occupation authorities, which are yet another manifestation of a deliberate repressive policy and discrimination against representatives of Ukraine's indigenous people, the Crimean Tatars, on national and religious grounds. Such illegal searches and arrests are intended to intimidate the local population. They serve as a covert means of forcing the Crimean Tatars out of the peninsula.
The harshest sentence, 22 years in a penal colony, was given to a resident of Sevastopol. Nadezhda Grekova, who was accused of attempting to assassinate a Russian military official. As of September 2025, the occupation authorities are illegally holding at least 30 Crimean women in Russian penal colonies and detention centers.
Not a single crime committed by the occupiers will go unpunished. Crimea was and remains a part of Ukraine, and those who persecute Crimean Tatars today will inevitably be held accountable under international law.
The repressive system on the occupied peninsula is a tool for demonstrative intimidation and punishment, where even young women, mothers, and the elderly become the Kremlin's next targets in its campaign to suppress any form of loyalty.
By 2026, Ukraine will unleash an aerial army, 20 million drones ready to dominate the skies. At the same time, American specialists are preparing to guide the Tomahawk missiles being handed over to Kyiv. The factories are running at full capacity, the blueprints are multiplying, and every drone brings Ukraine one step closer to breaking the occupiers' grip. A massive counteroffensive is on the horizon, and Russia has no idea what's coming. The countdown to the technological storm has begun. Our reporters reveal how Ukraine is turning the tide of this war and why the Kremlin fears what comes next. Watch now.
A powerful attack by Ukrainian drones. Engels and Saratov came under attack, which occurred in 2 waves. Due to the UAV attack, the local airport was closed. Residents of the Volgograd region also couldn't get any sleep that night. There, the Balashovskia electrical substation was attacked. A number of settlements in the region were left without electricity. The nightmare for the aggressor country doesn't end there. If partners help with funding, by 2026, Ukraine will be able to produce 20 million drones.
At the moment, Ukraine's defense forces are using the so-called drone wall tactic. According to the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Siersky, the width of the so-called kill zone reaches up to 10 kilometers. It is precisely the mass use of FPV drones that allows Ukraine's defense forces to neutralize the occupiers' advantage in manpower and equipment.
The President of the United States called on the Russian dictator to stop killing Ukrainians and Russians. In addition, Trump mentioned an offensive that he plans to discuss with the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
We will talk to him about the war. They want to go on the offensive. I will make a decision regarding this, but they would like to go on the offensive.
The point is that Trump is already commenting on the successes of Ukraine's defense forces after the fact. This is about the counter-offensive in the Zaporizhzhia direction. 3 settlements have been liberated: Shcherbaki, Malye Shcherbaki, Stepovoy, and accordingly, the counter-offensive of Ukraine's defense forces in the Dobropoli direction. 7 settlements have been liberated. In the Pokrovsk direction, Ukraine's defense forces have also achieved successful actions. Over the past day, there have also been successful actions by Ukraine's defense forces in the Sumy direction.
Consequences for Russia. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth warned the Kremlin in the event of a lack of progress in a peaceful resolution of the war. And Ukraine's partners in Nato have developed new defense equipment for our country and are now conducting its final testing.
This is about military political pressure. Military pressure means transferring strike weapons to Ukraine, primarily Tomahawks and accordingly American Rams with a range of 450 kilometers. But what's notable here is their quantity, 3,300. This quantity will effectively nullify the logistics of the Russian occupation army directly on the territory of the Russian Federation itself, and will allow Ukraine's defense forces to neutralize Russian military-industrial complexes within the Rams strike zone.
If Tomahawk missiles are supplied to Kyiv, they will be operated by American military personnel. Ukrainians will not even be trained to use these missiles, according to journalists from the Financial Times.
Not only will there be the automatic transfer of Tomahawk cruise missiles, but also accordingly the exchange of intelligence data. In other words, targeting instructions will be provided by American partners. But most importantly, in military situations, the operators of the cruise missiles will be the United States. And let me remind you, previously the Russian Federation used rhetoric claiming that the transfer of Tomahawks would automatically make the United States a party to and participant in the war. Therefore, the United States is making it clear that this rhetoric from the Russian Federation is not considered a serious argument by them.
An incident resembling a provocation worthy of the Russians occurred in Poland. During the exercises in which the Netherlands also participated, cars with Belarusian license plates were spotted. A few minutes later, drones appeared over the base, causing communication disruptions. It was not possible to determine their origin or operators.
After the appearance of the unidentified drones, the exercises were halted. Then, electronic warfare systems were redeployed from the Netherlands, which subsequently made it possible to bring these joint exercises to a logical conclusion.
The Kremlin is not giving up on the idea of persuading the US to refrain from supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. This is reported by analysts from the Institute for the Study of War. In addition, it is noted that the Russian Federation continues to make efforts to separate the US from Ukraine and Europe, as well as to undermine NATO's unity.
At this moment, that's all from me, Maria Farafonova. Even more hellish frontline news in our new episode. But for now, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.